So digitisation in terms of where we're up to at the moment, broadly we've now onboarded 50% of industry. It's possibly more than that because we have some bespoke users and some users of third-party systems, but we have probably majority of users are now on board with our system and using our system at the present time. So we've been listening. So when we did pilots of digitisation, we listened to feedback from users during pilot. We've taken that feedback on board and before we completed pilot, made some iterations to the system to improve usability. We're doing the same again now, whilst we're going through the onboarding phase, because as you can expect, we found that there are issues that came out during pilot that, or issues that didn't come out during pilot that are now becoming apparent to us as we go through the onboarding process. And to give you a couple of examples of that, we've had requests from training providers now to expose the number of bikes and the number of helmets that are needed where children don't have them, for example. So we're going to, whilst things are represented by icons in the app, we're going to expose that information to both a training provider and to the instructors in the app as well. Another example being that we've had requests to put in some greater group functionality, so we're speccing that at the moment for development after April. So I suppose my key point there is that we are listening and we are iterating as we go forward and move ahead with this. So the system as it stands isn't rock solid in terms of it's never going to be changed. It's almost continuously having a bit of a wash and polish as we move ahead at the present time. Next thing I just wanted to cover then was the onboarding process. So if you've not started onboarding at the moment, these are probably the recommended steps to go through. First would be to download the onboarding packs, and there's a lot to read. I'm sorry, there is a lot to read, but near the beginning of each onboarding pack, we've got videos, so you can bore yourself listening to me as I talk through how to set up an event as a training provider, how to set up consent options as a training provider, then how to complete a course as a training provider, and then from an instructor perspective, there are instructor app videos, and there's a video for school users as well. So if you watch all of those videos and have a look at each of the packs, you'll have a really good idea as to how the system works end to end for all the different users that are going to be using it. After that, so the next step then would be to actually start creating an event yourself. And I'd do that on the pilot server. So I'd create a test event on the pilot server. That pilot server synchronizes overnight each night instructor data and user data. So if it's not up to date today because you've added a new user, it should sync overnight as it does on its daily update, particularly as new instructors come in from First for Sport and may have just completed their training. So you know that that data set should stay up to date as we move forward. So set up a training event, select a school, but don't put in real school contact details. Put in an alternate email that you can perhaps have access to so you can log in and see the school functionality. And once you've created that test event with a couple of courses, you can then, for that event, ask your instructors to add a couple of consents. You can ask the instructors to add those consents and then go through to the app and go through and explore the app functionality end to end. So they can have a look at the app in terms of visibility of consents that's got medical issues or special educational needs that they need to be aware of. They can select the riders that they have added as consents, as test consents, and go through the training process. So they can record outcomes, they can record feedback, and they can record the rider hands up survey. At the end of that process, they can complete the check and complete process, which is a series of check boxes so you can see that for all riders you've recorded outcomes and done the survey and the feedback. So there's an end-to-end process there for the instructors. They will then have completed that process before they actually move out to, in the real world, go out to the first training provider and do the first training delivery. So from a training provider perspective, you'll then be able to look at the dashboard on the back end and have a look at that dashboard and see which instructors have worked with which riders. You'll be able to see that all of your instructors have completed the outcomes and feedback, And if they have done so, if you don't need to chase somebody to complete something they may have forgotten, you can then mark that course as complete, which in the normal run of process, if we were doing a live delivery, would then go through ready for approval by your grant recipient. So that's the steps for the pilot server. Then in terms of rolling out to go live, I'd say baby steps, choosing week one school, a school that perhaps is a school that you have a good relationship with, that you can work with, so that you can go through the process for the first time with a single school to get familiar with the system, anticipate any questions that may come back from the school, and then to support your users as you go through those steps. So once you've gone through that process once with your first live school, you'll be much better prepared then to roll on to another school, and another school, and another school. By way of a bit of background, I only work part-time for the Trust. I deliver Bikeability 2 days a week as well. I work for a training provider a training provider that onboarded back in July last year. And exactly what we did was week one school, week 2, another school. And then as we rolled into week 3, 4, 5, we just increased the volume of schools that we were working on. And that way, in the first 2 weeks, all of our instructors have been through the process in a live environment, having done it on the pilot server, and they were soon up to speed. Testament to that, I suppose, is we don't hear a peep out of my training provider that I work for, and I don't give them direct support. They just get on with it. So that they've probably done 50, 60 deliveries now, I'd imagine, digitised, and got through quite a few trainees as well. So I think the processes are straightforward. It's just getting your hands dirty and getting used to it, and getting familiar with that process on pilot first, and then gently rolling out. What I would say is we're here to support at the Trust side of things, and if you need to have an extra meeting because there are specific issues that you need to discuss, that are perhaps outside of the normal flow of training, then we can support you with those meetings. We've got the system admin team with the system admin email address that you can email at any time and get feedback. And yeah, basically, so myself, Dinny, and others are available if we need to look at more detailed questions. From a data protection perspective, we've also got a retained data protection consultant. So if you have data protection questions, or data protection questions are coming from the grant recipient, send those in to us, and we can get somebody who's a specialist, if we can't answer a simple question, to actually come back to you with a more detailed answer. So that's pretty much an overview of the process from my side. What I wanted to do now is really sort of open up and do a Q&A, because hopefully you've all taken time to read the onboarding materials and are familiar with the process, and perhaps now we've got specific questions that we need to address as we go forward. So if you'd like to pop any questions that you have into the Q&A at the bottom, and then we can work through those Q&A questions, and I can hopefully answer them, or perhaps another team member can answer them. Thank you. In the chat, Michelle's also posted that there are lots of FAQs on the Digi website page as well.
Yeah. So I run a small cycle training business. Obviously, I'm Bikeability approved. I don't get any funding because I haven't got any contracts with any of the councils to deliver Bikeability. So I do private lessons that parents pay for, and run holiday sessions as well.
Okay, brilliant.
I've looked at the digital paperwork, and I can't see that my business model fits in with the digital program, because it's all talking about schools. I've already got a website where customers book. They put down their age, the name of the child, the school they go to, which is going to be any one of 150 schools that I get from. I get a medical response from them, whether there's any SEN or anything like that, and whether they've got a bike and a helmet they're bringing. But the system doesn't really allow me to do that. It all seems to be aimed at schoolwork rather than private individuals.
Okay, so to answer that question, yes, schools is our is the primary market because that's where the grant funding goes to. But equally, you should be able to create your own non-grant funded training event as a training provider on the system. You could use our digitised consent form, although if you've got an online booking system, we also offer a facility for you to upload the consent data. So you could use your booking system, take the consent data from that and upload it into our system and still use the app to record the outcomes for the trainees. That would
Right.
give the trainees then the benefit of the feedback on the Bikeability Club website, where on the club website, if you have a look at the other webinar we did last week, there are interactive video quizzes that promote post-course sort of knowledge retention and a bit of further engagement. There are videos of all the outcomes as well that they would have done. So let's say they're doing level 2 training. There's a video of every level 2 outcome on there for them to look back and reflect on as well. And then you could provide them with one of our new certificates and badges on that basis. So I think there is an interface there, and I'm happy to take offline after this call and
Right.
more detailed exploration if you want to go through specific details and to support you in that regard.
Yeah, because I focus solely on learn to ride lessons.
Okay.
Um, I do occasionally do level 2 with children and level 3 with adults, but the business primarily focuses on learn to ride. So these children can later on take part in the bikeability in schools. Before I started my business, I just found that so many kids weren't able to ride, so they couldn't do bikeability.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I have another look at the onboarding and the digital thing, and just try and work out how my business can incorporate into the digital platform. But what I didn't want to do was to be sending 2 lots of emails to
Sure.
customers collecting the same information.
No, that's fine. Well, let's have a look at it separately. So email into system admin. We'll sort out a quick meeting to look at the specifics of how you work, and we can go through that level of detail there.
Okay, that'd be great.
Best place to do it. I'm just going to jump across to the chat now because we've got a few
Yep.
questions that appeared in the chat. So Lisa Mayo says there's not an option for non-diagnosed behaviour issues, only SEN. To be honest, that box on the consent forms tends to be used for all related behaviour issues on the consent form. I see it all the time as an instructor, so we get non-diagnosed information provided in there as well. Additionally, the schools can also add information using the notes function for riders. So if the school wishes to do so, they can add information relating to non-diagnosed riders as well. So hopefully that's caught it. There is one final option, which is as a training provider, using the consent options, you can add up to 2 additional questions for each consent that you do. So if you feel there's really a need to do so, you could add in your own additional question and have that data come down as well. Going to John Osborne's question now, we're planning to deliver through the HAF programme. Does the system work with that type of delivery as well? Yes, it does. So if you've got HAF funding and it's grant funded, you would select the HAF funding as part of the process when you set up the training delivery. So it's just a different grant line basically when you set that up. If you're working where you've got a HAF program, perhaps you're charging for some of those deliveries and using another system to take the money like Eventbrite, then we do have a consent upload facility. So if you've taken data elsewhere, you could take it from that booking system and then upload the rider data so that we can then do the outcomes as well. Moving on to Lisa's question then, the school doesn't seem to be able to choose which session the child will go to. We're very specific that our system is designed at the moment to be a recording tool in terms of the instructor app, and not a people management tool in terms of who's doing what on which day. That being said, we are speccing at the moment to put in functionality for some degree of group management. So let's say the school wants to split into, I don't know, group 1 for Monday, Tuesday, group 2 for Thursday, Friday, group 3 for the same days next week, and so on and so forth. that facility will come forward for the school to be able to do that, or the training provider in that regard as well. So we are listening, and we are choosing to sort of take the system forward and develop it as well. Yeah, noted. So Andrew's saying for larger delivery schools with circa 100 riders, the grouping is really important as such for the instructor. So the timeline is we're speccing at the moment, and we should be going into development in April. It shouldn't be overly complex, so I'd imagine as we run into sort of May, that functionality should be ready, because it shouldn't be overly complicated to do. In the meantime, if you're working in a larger school, I appreciate that when you get to the rider selection list, you'll have a really large list of riders when you're first selecting the group that you're working with. But each time you complete delivery for a group of riders, those riders on the selection list are then greyed out and dropped to the bottom of the list. So the actual list that you're scrolling through to select your riders becomes shorter and shorter as you go through that process. But noted, yes, we'll definitely be doing the group functionality. We realise that it is needed.
What experience have other training providers had of parents not being able to access technology and therefore having to run digital and non-digital processes alongside each other? We've had at least one school saying that they wouldn't participate if they had to go digital, as it wouldn't be accessible for their parents.
So the experience so far is that there are only occasionally issues with, I suppose, looking at my own experience, we've had to do more chasing in the what I call the more deprived areas, but we have still seen a good solid uptake in terms of parents engaging, giving the digital consent. You have to bear in mind that parents are used to dealing with digital systems from the schools now, in terms of the way the schools communicate with them as well. And most parents do have mobile phones. However, there are some areas where perhaps English isn't spoken as a first language, where it becomes more challenging. My recommendation on that approach would be kind of a two-tier process. So start with the digitized process with the QR code that parents can scan quickly and give consent for their rider to take part. And then if you have to back up that process, you can do so by, once you've maximized your digital uptake, sending a paper-based form to get any additional consents where you're perhaps not getting them digitally. Those rider names can be easily added to the system either by the training provider or the school, so that the parents can still get the digital feedback at the end of the process. Additionally, if a parent is struggling, then the school can either take the consent over the phone with them and add that consent on behalf of the parent. So there are many ways to help the parent to actually get on board and provide that consent. I would say that given the time and effort that's gone to building a really good Bikeability Club website, and with all the engagement that we've built on that website, that we should try our utmost to take people on that journey, encourage them to get into the digital process. If it really is not possible at the end of the day, then there is an option to still provide a certificate and give paper-based feedback.
Who's responsible for chasing parents, training provider or the school?
The school typically. So using my local training provider as an example, they've agreed perhaps a year ahead with the school that they're going to do the bikeability training on a particular date or particular dates. My local training provider sends a letter to that school, which is the letter that's going home to the parents, that gives them all the information they need regarding the training and has a QR code on that letter for the consent form. What the school does then through their own login is they can see the consents coming in, and they can then identify who has not responded, and typically they remind the whole class, to be honest. And it's not unheard of on the day sometimes to be you arrive to school and there's still the day before there might be a couple of consents that are outstanding, and I think that's important for the school to be able to log in and chase consents themselves, but also for the training provider as they approach the date for the training to be able to log into the system and say, look, we're expecting 30 kids, we've only got 25 consents at the moment.
Just asking a question on group management. Is there flexibility to allow which pupils are with an instructor? I think you've covered it a bit, but if you want to just answer that again.
I'll revisit it. Yes. So the plan for group function, which hopefully go into development in April and should be available sometime in May, is that it will allow training providers and schools to assign individuals to specific groups, so group 1, group 2, group 3. The way that will work in the app is that it will allow instructors to quickly filter the data to the riders that they're looking for, but it will act as a filter. You can then select that group if you want to work with them, but as I know what in real life, where I've been given groups, at a whim they can be swapped around really quickly, so it's not fixed. You can only select that group. You'll be able to select that group or all of that group except one, and then select one other rider from the list as well if you wish to do so.
Okay,
this isn't totally linked to the digitisation project, but the stationery seems to only state, I took part in a learn to ride. Are there any plans to introduce I learned to ride with, say, a company or Bikeability? It's only taking part.
I can pass that back to the comms and development team, certainly.
Well, that'd be good, because obviously for a lot of children, learning to ride a bike is a great achievement, particularly those with SEN issues. So it's just a thought.
Yeah. Okay.
thank you. I've got Lisa's asked, there's one in the chat and I think it's in the Q&A as well. So at the minute, the system doesn't fit in with what we currently do in-house. So it seems we'll be duplicating work for every course where your system doesn't align with how we run our courses. And then in the question and answer, she says, we're at risk of losing instructors who have expressed that digitisation will not be for them as our current system works fine. And that's a concern they have.
I think we need to take the instructors through the process, to be honest, to take them on the journey and get them on board. The feedback I've had, and I've not just worked with my local training provider, I've been out and to other training providers, is that once an instructor's used the app, they find it really quick and easy. There shouldn't be masses of duplication. Where we can work through the detail looking at existing systems, there are options in our system to upload data. So if you've got a booking system that you have already, there's an option to upload consent data to our system and then use the app for the remainder of the recording. We also offer a bespoke option. So if you've got a fully bespoke system, then we've got full APIs in place, and we're talking with organisations who want to integrate directly and continue using their existing systems, and then literally push the data through to Link as they've done the training. So hopefully we're covering all bases, but yeah, we can work through the detail with you and support so that we work out what the optimal solution is at the end.
I'm asking about bikes. If a parent ticks that they want a bike, is that passed on to them, to the training provider?
Yes. So if somebody says that they need a bike at the moment, it would appear in the training provider consent download data. It's also apparent to the instructors because we have an icon in the instructor app that which will tell you which riders don't have a bike there as well. What we're also looking to do as part of the development work and taking things forward is to expose the number of bikes and also the number of helmets that may be required to both the training provider and the instructors in the app. So that information is all visible prior to the training delivery. So yeah, hopefully we've covered that, and in a few iterations it should make the information very transparent. It seems that training providers are well, instructors have been counting how many without bikes and then grabbing them from vans. So we just need to make the information more accessible to training providers.
Do we recommend instructors using their personal phones? She works for a council as the grant recipient and training provider, and information governments are concerned about tutors losing their personal phones that might not have pins, and children's data might be compromised. So that's the first question with regards to mobile phones. Okay.
In terms of the instructor app on mobile phones, no, there shouldn't be an issue in terms of using a personal mobile phone. Number one, any data that comes down from the trust is encrypted on that device. The data is only accessible through two-factor authentication. So you've got to have your phone, your username and password, and then your text message to validate the login. You then have to set a PIN to access that instructor app as well. Once you log out of that app, all data is purged from the device as well. So from a user perspective, anybody with a mobile phone, it'd be ridiculous not to have a pin on your mobile phone. You just so. But we have that extra layer of access and prevention. So if you just lose the base mobile phone, no, the data is not accessible without going through all of those authentication steps.
And the second question with regards to phones, what is the plan for schools who remove instructor phones so photos can't be taken? So this means obviously that they haven't got the phone on them at the time of delivery.
So what we've found, and we've been through a similar process in my local area, is schools, once they know why phones are to be used and what they're used for, don't seem to have an issue with those phones being used. If you really can't use a phone, you'll have to drop back to a paper scenario if you want to record information. And the only schools I've experienced where that happens are the special educational needs schools. But all of the other schools, many of whom were saying no phones, we're telling them how we're going to use the phones, and we're sensitive about how we use those phones as well. So we're not stood all day with a mobile phone in front of the trainees. We produce the phone when we're first selecting our riders, and we're telling the riders what we're doing when we're doing that. We're doing the same when we're doing the hands up survey, and then all of the recording of the outcomes can be done afterwards. So let's say I can't use my phone at all. I can look at who the riders are before I turn up. I can look at any issues that have been raised on the consent forms before I turn up. If I had to, I could just go down a paper route of recording that information and adding it later. But mostly, I mean, my experience, and I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but my experience is those that were sort of naysayers on the phones have kind of gone full circle. We've gone from sort of no, you can't use your phones to yes, you can, to now, can you send us some videos and images that we can use on our school social media? So it's gone full circle with some of the schools. But I think the important thing is communication. They need to understand what the device is used for and when.
And we have got some resources to help you with that within the guidance packs as well for schools, some template letters. The next question is with regards to schools logging into Link. So they've had conflicting information regarding whether schools will have to log into Link. Is it a must that schools log into the new platform? For providers who use booking platforms to manage a large number of schools, whether schools must engage with one or two systems to receive bikeability is a critical difference.
Okay, so let's say there's a platform that's used and it's one of the third-party platforms that are available to purchase. Though we're working to integrate with the likes of Clarity. So if it's a Clarity-based system, we're working with the developers at Clarity to integrate everything that their system does directly into our system. So if your system does all of that school interaction and you're a Clarity user, then it will be sort of brought on board through digitisation and you'll continue using your existing system. In terms of other users, I mean, it depends if you're a bespoke user on what the setup is, but which is why we're having individual bespoke user meetings. So yes, there may be possibility they keep using your system, or there may be possibility they use our system. What our system actually does is it gives access to details of all the riders. It allows the schools to add additional consents. It allows the school to provide the confirmed book figure, because at the present time we pay on booked. So there's a good reason there for the school to access that system. Where I've had feedback from the schools, that the feedback's been that it's been quick and easy to use to facilitate all of those things.
Thank you. From Terry Laywood, we deliver level 1 and 2 combined, Monday to Thursday, but at the end of the sessions, they cherry pick some capable riders for the level 3 to be delivered on the Friday of the same week. How can we do this on the digital system as they have not gone through the booking system?
So on the digital system, so if you just add the level 3 course to your training delivery, so you've got one set of consents and the best riders are going to do level 3 on the Friday, then you can go through the whole process of doing your level 1 and 2 training, and then literally when you get to Friday, open up your level 3 course, and the riders that you have in front of you that are going to do level 3, literally just select those riders and start to go through the training with them on that course.
Lisa says, is there an option for us to not use the system and just provide the data required to bikeability in another way?
if you have a bespoke system and you have a developer that's going to integrate via the API, then yes, there is an option to do that. Again, I think we need to have a sort of more detailed meeting to work through that together, and we can then determine together what the best solution is going to be.
But digitisation as a concept, no, that's something
No,
everyone
sorry,
has to
yes,
do. Yeah. It is part of the terms and conditions of grant recipients. So yeah, it is an optional, but how you do it, there are variations of
lots of different routes.
options. Yeah.
How do we ensure that schools enter the rider characteristics to save the instructors doing it?
We've created 2 routes for the rider characteristics. So one option is that as a training provider, you can choose to include the characteristics questions on your consent forms and actually gather that data during consent. So that is option 1. And then Link as a system, as you record outcomes and complete courses for each individual rider, it will then take data from that consent form and add it into the characteristics on the back end of Link. So let's say you've got, I don't know, 20 riders, 18 take part, the system will automatically aggregate those 18 characteristics data sets into the overall characteristics for your course completion. So that's option 1. Option 2 is we've built into the app an option to record consents in the app. So my personal experience is I find it really quick and easy to get that information from the schools. It takes 2 minutes. So I would turn up to a school and I'd speak to the office manager or the business manager, and they would give me the consent information and the rider characteristic information. I just put it straight into the app there and then, and that submits that data back to Link. So there's a couple of routes we've put in there. We're not asking the schools directly on the back end on their school login to add that information directly. We've sort of provided 2 other routes to record that information, because typically right now we're having to chase schools to get that data, and it's about speaking to the right person.
FYI, for others, we tried asking bespoke questions on the consent form about if a loan bike is required, and if yes, what is the height of the trainee so we can provide the right bike sizes. But this hasn't worked. Half the parents didn't know how tall their children were or didn't understand the question. So we will still have to rely on the schools to provide bike numbers and size required. Will we just ask on the form, is a loan bike required, yes or no? Hopefully this works.
Based on, so there's the bikes question on the consent form, but there aren't specifics about details for loan bikes and that kind of thing. My personal experience of bikes is when you're delivering to year 5 and 6, mostly you're getting away with 24-inch wheeled bikes on the loan bikes, and if we take bikes to a school, we have a couple of 26-inch wheel bikes, but most of the other bikes are all the smaller size bikes, and they have a pretty much vast seat range, so we don't need to know the heights beforehand. And the 26-inch bikes, if you have got a tall year 6 rider, would cater for that. So, but yeah, parents, my experience of parents is that, oh goodness me, you can have another parent, you get 2 consents in from 2 parents and get totally different information from them sometimes. So they're not necessarily reliable in that regard.
So what is the timescale for digitisation being rolled out? And also, when will the recording be the only way we can work? So when will it be compulsory?
So what we're doing at the moment is the deadline for people to be moving on to digitisation is effectively the end of March as we move into the new financial year. We've provided information and onboarding materials to everybody back in the sort of late summer, early autumn last year to give everyone plenty of time to prepare and to get up to speed. So we accept there may be some sort of, not everyone is going to hit that deadline exactly, but what we're looking for is that people are taking active steps and moving forward with their onboarding. And we will support them in that regard. In terms of the delivery side on Link, yes, we'll be phasing out the non-digi delivery, and that'll be happening. We'll end up with an integrated claim form that says, here's all my Digi riders, and it may be that we end up with a scenario where you've got a couple that can't do the Digi route, they can be added onto it, but Digi will be the main mechanism for actually recording and doing your grant claims.
Okay, thank you. And Steve has asked, could you advise on the process if you have to use a paper format because of parents without IT access in areas of high deprivation? He has a concern of data transfer and GDPR.
So from the paper-based side, so let's say you've had to go totally paper on something, you can still use the new certificate and badge, so certificate of completion and the badge for the training, but we've also provided a feedback form there so that you can give feedback to that parent as well, in addition to that certificate and badge that you've done. So in terms of the data transfer, this is why we're looking at modifying links so that if you've got a couple of riders or half a dozen riders where they really can't be Digi for that reason, they can be still added onto the same delivery and recorded.
Okay, and Rebecca has asked a question which I think quite a few people have said that they'd like to know the answer as well. Is there a way to not have the I need a bike option because we don't provide them at all?
I think the way it's worded, so we're not specifically offering bikes to people on the consent forms. It's saying I've got a bike and I've checked it. Is pretty much what we're saying. We're not specifically offering bikes. So yeah, that's the way it works. We're asking people to have checked them at the end of the day. I'm just checking the chat here to see if I've answered that properly.
There's also another question from Andrew saying, how do we ensure that schools enter the rider characteristics to save the instructor having to do it?
So, like I said, on the consent options, if you want to gather it from consent, the training provider under the consent options can enable the characteristics being collected via that route. So 3 different routes really. You can do it via that route. You can have the instructor collect it on the day and log it in the app, or the school can just provide you that information via email and you can log it directly onto Link.
Andrew's also said, is there funding to support the transition to Digi? As it's apparent that from all that have been spoken of here, that this is considerable time needed to onboard and manage that transition.
Okay, as an organisation, no, there isn't any funding for the transition to digitisation at the moment. There isn't likely to be either. At the end of the day, the process is pretty straightforward and does deliver in most circumstances efficiencies for the training providers. It's not an overly complex process. I think once you've been through it a couple of times and familiarised yourself, you find it really quite straightforward.
If our bookings are done by Clarity, none of the information for the instructors will be on the instructor app, only on their Cycle Ready account. I know there is talk that Cycle Ready are working on linking to Link. Are we meant to carry on using Cycle Ready or completely move to Link or use both or carry on as we are until Cycle Ready syncs up to Link?
Carry on as you are with Cycle Ready. We have a plan in place with Cycle Ready, which they've communicated out to their customer base already via email. So continue using Cycle Ready. We've got a 2-stage process that's going to go to pilot the week after next. To be going to pilot, then stage 1 Cycle Ready then will upgrade individual user accounts to start pushing data to us. And then stage 2 will be the full integration of data. So that's happening over the next few months. It is in hand. Given the way that Cycle Ready have slightly bespoke user instances for each of their customers, it's just going to take a while because it's not just about having one central system that's upgraded. There are lots of little sort of nuances that need to be done with each customer. So yes, you will remain on the Cycle Ready platform. And that data will be pushed over to us, and the gap I think they've got to plug is getting that consent process added to it. What that means in terms of Link, it means you won't have to come back to Link and enter any data onto Link, but what you'll need to do at the end of the process is just mark those courses as complete on Link to go through to the grant claim.
The question about Clarity, so is the trust a client of Clarity? Or any other platforms? It seems that this might be the only way to put the onus on them to create the API at no additional cost to providers. if other platforms such as Coordinate Sport charge for the API function. If and when it's completed, then it will eliminate the potential cost saving of Link being free to us.
Okay, so clarity. So just differentiate what the trust is providing here is a tool for gathering consents and recording outcomes and providing that feedback to parents. What a system like Clarity does is provides all the people management functionality as well. So who are the instructors, who's available when, assigning those instructors based on distance to whichever delivery they're going to take part in as well. And I believe it also handles all of the billing aspects as well in terms of that workforce management. So we were never going to move into that marketplace as an organisation because there are companies like Clarity that already do that and offer their own booking platforms which extend beyond bikeability as well. You know, they do a lot more than what we do. So because they've got their customer base across the country, they are not charging us free of charge, supporting their customers by doing the integration work free of charge and rolling out to their customer base. Just reading about Coordinate. So Coordinate, on the other hand, we did approach them and asked if they'd like to integrate with us, and basically, despite lots of chasing, they've kind of gone radio silent on us. They're not engaging with us at all. So they've obviously made a decision that they don't wish to integrate with us. So yes, there may be an impact there in terms of some extra work. The option was given to them, all of the documentation is available. We are happy to work with them so that they can support their customers, but they've chosen not to do so.
Yeah, so those few people that were using Coordinate are basically using our systems. So Lisa has said, I think it's straightforward for those who didn't already have a digital platform or larger training providers, but there was no contact towards us. I'm not sure who us is, sorry, Lisa, but as an in-house team in a London borough about how it would work. It seems from previous meetings that our system cannot integrate with yours. So using yours is the only option.
I think what we'll find is there's a halfway house there when we've finished working through the detail on it. So I'm not convinced that ours is the only option. I think there'll be a halfway house. There'll be an upload option. We can maybe work to create some custom templates. So, you know, that there'll still be a level of integration. I'm expecting you still be able to use quite a lot of your own system. But like I say, we need to just finish working through the detail on that to be sure. Okay, so from my side, if I need to have some more direct meetings, I'm happy to do so to work through specific issues related to specific training providers and grant recipients. More than happy to do that.
I think it might be helpful, Josie, if you don't mind, sorry to sort of throw you straight into it, but just to explain the award side of things, because I think that hasn't really been covered. I think it's important for people to understand the link between Digi and the awards, and Simon, and you know, whoever.
Yeah, sure. So so at the moment, as you'll all be able to see, on the shop, we've got both the old awards that have been used where you sort of with the paper based, and we've also got the new awards. And so what we are telling everyone is, you know, don't go and throw away your old awards. You know, we don't want you to do that. Continue using the certificates until you've used them up, because we wouldn't want you to be sort of just getting rid of those. And then as you move on and making orders, and as you go onto the Digi system, you start buying the new awards as well. So, and it will be that these are available for this whole period where you are moving over to the new system as well. So it's not we're not going to stop selling them on the 31st of March. That's not the case. We will keep selling them as everyone's moving through. If there's any particular questions about the awards, you know, you can ask it here or email through, and I can answer those and talk you through those as well. The badges obviously remain the same. It's just the different certificates.
And just draw your attention to the newsletters that's gone out, which also talk to you about the Bikeability Club and the games and the access to the Bikeability Club site, which is only available through the digitised route as well. So I would encourage people to have a look at that in the newsletter that's been sent out.
Like I say, do get in touch with system admin. We can arrange other follow-up meetings where we need to do so. Thank you very much for the very long list of questions, everybody. It's been nice to talk to you all.